Well, welcome to Jefferson Liberty Radio, the voice of liberty in the Central Valley of California. I am Matthew. I'm actually out this week, so this is all pre-recorded, but I'm going to pass it along to the team in studio in just a second. But first, I want to tell you about our sponsorship opportunities. We are looking for sponsors for our show. We do really need your support to keep this show on the air. So if you're interested, we believe that we would provide great services to you, your business venture, etc. If you or anybody that you know of are interested in sponsoring our show, we've got some pretty reasonable rates. You can get in touch with us at sponsors@jeffersonlibertyradio.com. You can head over to our website, jeffersonlibertyradio.com. Find us on Facebook, message us, get in touch with us somehow. We do have a phone number as well, 209-214-8099. That's 209-214-8099. Get in touch with us. We would really love to set up a sponsorship opportunity for you or somebody that you know. We'll be looking forward to hearing from you soon. Now let's get on to the episode, and I'm going to pass it along to the team in studio.
Welcome to this week's episode of Jefferson Liberty Radio, the voice of liberty in the Central Valley. Tonight we're joined by Debbie Ferrari of California Truckers Guild, and we're going to be discussing Assembly Bill 5. How are you this evening, Debbie?
I'm fine. Thank you for calling.
Excellent, excellent. And we're joined by Pat, as always.
Hello, Debbie, and hello, John.
Hello. Hope you're
Hello there.
doing good.
Good. Yeah, I hope everyone's doing well today.
Would like to let you introduce yourself, Debbie, and get a brief synopsis about the California Truckers Guild and Assembly Bill 5 this evening.
Okay. Basically, I personally have been in the construction trucking industry for 38 years. We've joined forces with California Truckers Guild, and we're basically representing thousands of owner-operators across the state and other trucking firms that hire them to stand up for our rights in terms of being able to continue to operate legally if we meet appropriate guidelines. A year and a half ago, I think it was, we were told by a few lawyers that it's going to be illegal to use owner-operators in any capacity, heavy truck owner-operators, and that you're just going to have to stop doing it immediately. And I come from a small business. I still have my own small business, and I also work as an employee. And to be told that suddenly, I just couldn't believe it. And, of course, it was explained to us that it was based on the Dynamex Supreme Court ruling. And with that ruling, what happened was there were a lot of details in the ruling that would have nothing to do with trucking or our sector of trucking. But what ended up happening was all of those details were left out when they came up with the so-called ABC rule that then has gotten adopted through AB5. So none of that mattered. For example, in the Dynamex lawsuit, it specifically said that all the vehicles weighed less than 26,000 pounds. And we feel that the Supreme Court actually put that on there because they weren't talking about commercial heavy trucks. But that never got carried over to the ABC rule. So that sort of thing. And also the Dynamex workers were employees that were suddenly turned into independent contractors, which has had nothing to do with all the people that we're talking about. But every lawyer and every association that I had talked to said none of that matters. All that matters is basically, more than anything, the B prong of ABC, which says if you're a trucker, you can't work for another trucker. And, of course, it also meant that if you're a doctor, you can't work for a hospital. If you're a hairdresser, you can't work for a salon, et cetera. But what's happened since then is people are starting to get AB5 will pass, I'll tell you that. And people are starting to get carve-outs to AB5 as they go along. Gig economy is the largest target. We don't know how that's going to be settled. They won't really get a carve-out. They'll get some kind of a settlement. We feel that the trucking industry is definitely the second largest target. So, and we've explained very clearly to the author the difference between legitimate heavy trucking and heavy trucking that does need some reform. So in the meantime, they've been giving all kinds of exemptions to people that, we actually feel wouldn't even deserve it as much, such as direct sales. Like, for example, I don't want to pick on any one company, but Avon always comes to mind. Nothing against Avon, but a person selling Avon is now exempt from this law, whereas a legitimate truck owner operator that paid $160,000 now for his own truck, he has his own insurance, his own permitting. They're literally, AB5 is telling him, you can no longer be an owner operator. Now you got to get rid of that truck. You got to lose that truck, and we expect you to work as an employee for a larger firm or a corporation. And they claim that would help the owner operator. Well, if he really owns his truck and he really made his own investment, he really has his own permit, it would cause him to go bankrupt and hurt him. It would really, really hurt him. There are misclassified owner operators that it may help, but that has nothing to do with the people that we're representing.
Right, and those misclassified would be like your big companies, your big five out of Utah's lease operators and such like that, where they're predatorily. I don't know if that's even a word, predatorily.
Yeah, it's a word.
But those larger companies, as we know in the industry, our listeners may not know, but those guys are brought in right out of truck school, and they're pressured to lease these trucks from those companies, and they're force dispatched. So this is not what we're talking about with the independent contractor or the independent driver.
Okay,
that's exactly right.
That cleared something up for me.
Well,
good,
right.
I'm glad you did that.
And we have sat down with the author herself and clearly explained the differences, because the author, not only was she using the Dynamex workers as an example, she was using example of a firm similar to what you're talking about, where they were sued and they lost, and she was using that example. This is why truckers need to be put out of business. And we ordered the lawsuit and we looked in it. It was very clear. Those so-called owner operators, as you said, the person who owned the brokerage set him up with the truck. So he was stuck with him. He was like a lien holder. He was taking the money out of his check. Plus he was using the permitting of that overlying carrier. So he was stuck with that guy, whereas the people we're talking about, they have their own truck, they have their own permit. If they don't like who they're working for, they can leave anytime they want. We've explained that very clearly, but we just can't get the traction we need to get our fair exemption that we need. And of course, we're running out of time to get that exemption.
Right. I think the next step is this goes before the Appropriations Committee.
That's correct.
In the Senate.
Right, and that's viewed as a formality. It already passed labor. I didn't know anything about politics when this started, and I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
But no, it's commonly thought that the appropriations, I feel there's reason to relook at it in appropriations, but basically people are saying it'll be held in suspense, they say, and towards the end of August it would theoretically pass appropriations. Then it goes to the Senate floor. The bill's going to pass. I mean, there's nobody that thinks the bill won't pass, so the Senate's going to vote on that, and it'll pass. And if we still don't have our exemption for legitimate truck owner operators, it goes back to Assembly. They're going to still do some exemptions. If we still don't get it, it goes to the governor's desk. That'll be our last chance. So we're doing everything we can to write letters, do surveys. We've talked to senators, Assembly members, but it is a huge, tough nut. Most people have said don't even try it that hard in politics.
Oh, my. Yeah. That's understandable. I mean, politically speaking.
Well, but we are making some progress. No longer can people just say this is hopeless, you guys are stuck with this. The author already had to state on the Assembly floor that something should be done of some sort about trucking. We had a fabulous assemblyman that stood up and talked about trucking, three of them actually, but wonderful assemblyman. Bill Quirk spoke up. A couple of other assembly people spoke up and said, look, and you even had the chairman of Assembly Labor Committee said something. So people have said something's got to be done, and she's acknowledged. But in the meantime, it's not happening, and we're almost out of time.
So I do have a question. This really seems to be targeting. It's like a target. The small business owner of a truck is actually being targeted by this bill AB5. Is because there, like you said, there were so many exemptions, including like your example of Avon, and I'm sure that there's many more. I've read that it's a huge list of exemptions.
Right, hairdressers, insurance agents, insurance brokers, stock brokers.
Right.
The list goes on and on.
Right.
Yeah,
So if they're all exempt, why are they targeting just the truck drivers or the owner operators?
Okay. If I answer the question the way Lorena Gonzalez, the author of the bill, answered it, she said that she used examples of truckers losing their trucks because of brokers taking them away from them, people earning less than minimum wage, people having to stand by for free, people deserving to have benefits. All of those reasons that may be true those are the reasons she's giving. But since we've explained again and again in very great deal the differences, every time we bring it up, they don't really have an argument. They bring up different things that are anecdotal, but yes, it does end up to the point where, of course, there are some legitimate, reforms needed. But yes, it gets to the point where they are being treated as a target. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. There is an element that would like to see, those owner operators be employees instead. But the thing is the owner operators aren't even going to end up agreeing to be employees. Most of them, a lot of them don't know this is happening to them. And they're not going to just sit back for being put out of business after they made a huge investment, go bankrupt, be forced to work, as an employee for a corporation. They're not going to stand up and tolerate that. There would be very few. So you're just going to end up with a disaster on your hands. And, in agriculture, SB1 work freeways and all that.
Right.
If those owner operators are told they're not allowed to operate legally, that work's not going to get done properly. All those freeways that need to be improved, those rely very heavily on these owner operators. They aren't willing to be drivers. If, we utilize employee drivers and we would hire them in a heartbeat, but they aren't willing. That's not what they want. Their terms were, I'm an owner operator. You either hire me as is or I'll move on down the road.
Mm-hmm. Well, usually when you're in business for yourself, which is what these people are, who you are, you do take some risk, and they're willing to take this risk. Come on, let them have a chance at making their business work. It's very frustrating, and I definitely can understand your frustration. This is beyond
Right. And it has to be an appropriate and deserved risk. I say that owner operators need to want to be in business, and they have to have earned it. So if a guy is going to take a risk to the point where he's borrowing 100% of his investment, that's not a smart or appropriate risk. But if he went out and did that investment on his own, chances are he's going to do quite well because he's financially stable.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there's a risk, and he can change his mind down the road. So there's different types of risk. This is very much a risk, but again, they're starting with some capital. These days, if you want to be an owner operator, you've got to start with a capital investment, because it's not, as you know, it's not cheap to buy a truck anymore. You've got to meet the Air Resources Board standard, so it's a huge investment.
Right.
So you're making an investment in that business.
Right, and even a used truck, say like a 2011 with 600,000 miles, we know, well, us in the industry know that truck's not going to last you, 30, 40 years. That we're talking a truck that'll get you by for 3 or 4 years, maybe. Depending on the mileage you're doing, the type of work you're doing. Mm-hmm. Even that truck's $50,000 right now. It's not like these guys are going out and they're putting down $150,000, $160,000 on their first truck. Some of these guys, they get started with their operating authority from the state or the federal government, and buy a $50,000 truck and drag around someone else's trailer. These are the guys that this is targeting, guys that are coming in to make a start that could potentially be larger companies in the future and
That's right.
and future employers.
Yeah, they will be. That's a good point. And future employers themselves. So usually, when you're in business for yourself, you are there for a reason. You're there to not just stay stagnant, and you want to move up. You want to start making some money.
Right.
You want to keep working, and
Right.
you don't want to work for someone else. It's okay. So
and
I
how
get
do
all
you
that.
Right. And as you said, everybody that I know that has a larger company, they started as a single owner operator.
Yeah,
How do you ever get to the point? And some want to just stay as an owner operator. They enjoy that. That's their choice.
Oh, that example goes in many different areas as far as, getting your foot in the door to
Right.
try. Yeah. Wow.
Basically, what's happening here, and what Debbie is trying to explain to us was that the ABC test. That's actually S.G. Barillo and Sons Incorporated versus the Department of Industrial Relations that came up with that ABC test, and it has to do with things like do you set your own schedule? Do you provide your own capital? Do you maintain your own licenses and operating authorities?
Right. And that's the A and the C prong. And in fact, if we get an exemption, we're going to get an exemption and revert to Borello. So you still have to run a clean operation, and you still would pretty much have to meet all those things you mentioned. But the B prong is the killer, because it says you can't work for another trucker ever.
Right.
Well, anybody who knows trucking at all knows there is no way to ever operate as a trucker unless you can work for another trucker at least some of the time. And sometimes if you only have one truck all of the time, that's just the nature of how you keep busy. So that's the issue. We're trying to revert back to the Borello standard. So we still would have a strict standard to adhere to. We just have a fighting chance. With the B prong, there's no fighting chance. You're gone.
Right. Well, like I know friends of mine, they haul cattle. Well, not every guy has his own ranchers that he works for. Most of these guys, they'll have one individual, one owner operator will have a client, and they need 4 or 5 trucks, so they have to call 3 or 4 other guys to help take care of that one cattle rancher.
Right.
When these things need to move,
right.
They need to move. When like she said, that with the asphalt projects or the road repairs, you could have 100 owner operators on one project to get one section of freeway repaved.
Well, that's right. And they're not going to give the contractor is not going to give a contract to 100 different guys and then hope they'll show up when they call them. They want to hold 1 or 2, maybe 3 companies responsible, and those guys go out and get the guys. That's just the reality of how it's got to be done.
And that's how it's worked for years. And what the state's trying to do here is say that they want to pick the winner, in my opinion, and I'm sure in the Trucking Guild and the coalition's opinion, they want to pick the winners and the losers in this thing through this bill.
Well, yeah, and it's just going to turn everything upside down. I mean, there's some real silly examples. For example, at the fire cleanup, you've had up to 1,000 owner-operators working. Well, there's only a handful of trucking brokers that are responsible for all of that, working through public entities to do all of that necessary cleanup. So you've only got 5 trucking firms hiring like 1,000 owner-operators in the state. On the one hand, they're saying it's against the law for a broker to hire an owner-operator. On the other hand, they're happily using their services as we speak for all of this fire cleanup. So how can they have it both ways? Then why they would theoretically need to shut down that fire cleanup, but they're just going ahead and letting it continue. If it's not fire cleanup, it's going to be dam cleanup. Those rely on owner-operators. You can't just grab employee drivers to take care of that stuff. they pull owner-operators from all over to take care of those sorts of things.
Right. Right. Well, what we need to understand, though, is okay, even owner-operators hire individuals to drive their trucks, and they're still, subject to the workers' compensation laws, the unemployment insurance laws, and those regulations we already have.
Right.
So
right, and then the owner, right.
Go ahead.
And the owner-operator, I was going to say the owner-operator himself, though, he might have a second truck, but he himself still isn't allowed to work for another trucker.
Right.
Oh my! Well, let me just ask one question then. This is really a silly question, probably, but so if this AB5 really only pertains to the trucking industry, is there any other industry that is affected by AB5 other than the trucking industry at this point?
Well, the gig economy is the number one target. Uber, Lyft, DoorDash.
Okay, there we go.
They're the number one target. So I don't know, and of course, what type of agreement they'll come up with those, all of those companies. They're negotiating. Who knows how that'll end up? So they're the number one target. I call us the number two. You're going to have, and there will be trucking that will need to reform through all of this. There will be plenty of it. So there will be trucking that will need to adhere to, well, you didn't need to have the B prong. They already were breaking Borello, but you will need to have trucking reform, so you'd have a partial trucking exemption. But there are other industries that will go down with AB5 and not be able to continue. Janitorial, for example, maybe some manicurists, a hairdressers where the price is set in the window and they have no control over their customers. I don't think they'll make it. There's handfuls of self-employed. Anyone who doesn't have any person, I don't care who they are, if they're self-employed and they don't literally have an exemption, this applies to them. Wow. So there's plenty that still don't have exemptions at this time.
Wow.
Right. So we run a show where we discuss all things political, and we're pretty constitutional as far as we need to follow the state and federal constitutions. Has anyone on the coalition or the trucking guild thought to approach Gonzalez with, since interstate commerce is regulated by the federal government through the Constitution. I mean, that's one of the aspects of the federal Constitution gives authority over. And most of these owner-operators do have, state and federal authorities. Or if one didn't have federal authorities, what does the coalition think about us all getting federal authority and asking for an exemption based on this is not a state right responsibility?
Right. Well, two issues with that. You've got the two major trucking associations in California that both have filed lawsuit on that basis. The federal, F4A they call it, which is that we're exempt because we meet the federal standards. So that's going to be settled in court eventually. It's not an argument for us right now. They don't want to accept that argument. That's going to be fought out in court, literally. We might win, we might lose. But the problem with the federal standard is that the federal standard allows this leaseback option. And this leaseback option, you can't really hang your hat on it, federal standard or not. Look someone straight in the eye and say, just because we're federal, we deserve an exemption. It's a hard case to make because legally, you can do the leaseback option and you can be controlled. Now, when I say legally, I mean it doesn't speak as to misclassification, but you can do it legally, so you still have all of that abuse. And, of course, all the truckers down at the port, they follow the federal standard because the port does not count as state. They count as federal. So that's how all this started. They were upset over the truckers at the port because they were following the federal standard. They were I'm sure there are a lot of them were fantastic, but they were, they felt they were federally exempt, and they are when it comes to safety standard, through the CHP DMV and all that. But it doesn't really speak as to classification. I mean, those quote-unquote owner-operators that don't have their own permit, technically they don't have to have their own insurance. Technically, if they get in an accident, that goes on the record of the person who has the motor carrier permit. So, I mean, you can try to make that case. That'll, like I say, that's going to be settled in the courts eventually. I think eventually down the road, it probably would lose. I don't know, maybe it'll win, but I mean, it's, like I say, it's hard to hang your hat when you know there are some abuses out there.
Right. Just so we're clear, I was just playing devil's advocate with that question.
No, I understand, of course, and I appreciate. I would like to mention quickly another crazy aspect of this are the California Air Resources Board grants. They are currently still giving grants to owner-operators. A grant is a partial, just as it says, a grant towards buying a brand new truck. If you want to qualify for a brand new truck because of the new smog laws, what you have to do, you have to take your older truck and you have to literally crush it and destroy it. That's the first thing you have to do. So you have a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 truck. Goodbye. It's crushed. Next thing you do, you get a grant from the state of California for $50,000. You have to pay tax on that. You go and you get your own loan and you put your own money in, another 110. Now you buy a truck for 160. That grant contract says that if you don't stay in business for a minimum of, say, 2 years, you owe that $50,000 back to the state. Is this hilarious that the state is currently giving these grants, telling owner-operators you're required to stay in business for 2 years while at the same time trying to put them out of business? I mean, it's like a circular fire drill going on.
Anything government does just doesn't make sense. It's just so mind-boggling. I can't.
It's a circus.
It is just like Debbie just said. It is a circus.
Well, how many fines are they going to generate on guys not paying that money back on time?
Yeah. Yep.
Well,
it's a money generator. That's what they do. They generate money. They don't make it. They generate it.
Right. Well, they will have lost their $50,000. It wouldn't have been used for what they wanted to be used for. And those guys are all going to be going bankrupt if they're not allowed to work, or people are going to go around try to find, ways to get around it. You're going to have a certain element that's cheating, and any of those things, any of that stuff hurts the legitimate operators when people start doing that, and it doesn't follow the intent. If you take Gonzalez's, what they're saying is the intent. The intent is to help workers. And that should be any workers, whether they're employees, whether they're owner-operators, however they can make the most money. And, they're really only promising minimum wage, overtime, some benefits, but with the owner-operators, they're making so much more than that. So that's the point, is that those people would actually be, severely hurt over this.
Right.
I hope that we'll have some people who are going to be hurt by this. I hope they listen to this, and I hope they can. I wish everybody, like you said though, Debbie. You said not everybody knows about this. Not every trucker knows about this.
Well, very few know about it, and those that have been told, it's so incredulous to them that they really don't believe it because they're busy working.
Yeah.
And they can't really accept it.
That's what they're.
So you've got all these people that are being put out of business that have no idea that it's being done to them and no chance to speak up for themselves.
Just so sad. Yeah. It wow.
Well, these pieces of legislation, regardless of what industry they affect or what the legislation is about, they're not disseminated or broadcasted to the people.
No.
In a manner in which we can readily access them or understand them.
Right.
Oh, no, not at all. You've got to dig in. There's no way to figure that's being done to them. I mean, really, this should have gone to the public for a vote. I mean, the people that are in the trucking industry should have been allowed to vote on this.
Yeah.
It's a travesty, and many people have gone to the Capitol over and over again. I mean, I've gone dozens and dozens of times, and you keep talking to the same people over and over. The truckers have taken the day off work, some of them. They've gone, they've lobbied, and they go over and over. They send letters, and everybody's thinking, why do I have to send 100 letters before it might make a difference? Why isn't my one letter making a difference?
Well, yeah, that's it. And I'm sure that this has crossed your mind, this idea. But something happened in Oregon last month. It was the month before
the timber unity,
was it June? And they changed John, tell me more. Can you?
Well,
what happened?
What they had, Oregon was trying to do their cap and trade bill. Do you remember that situation? Where the whole logging industry came together, and because they viewed that cap and trade was going to affect the entire industry, kind of like CARB has affected the entire trucking industry, the construction industry, logging, if we still had a logging industry.
I'm just wondering, why not consider doing that same thing here in California?
Well, they do have a rally coming up, I believe, on one of your coalition's Facebook pages, or the California Truckers Guild. I saw like a Tuesday the 13th. They're doing something at the Capitol, if I believe, a rally of some type.
Yes, we do, and we will be doing that. We're trying to keep it as organized as we can, but anybody who is interested in coming and coming to the Capitol and standing up for trucking, they need to find a place for parking. There are some truckers that will be coming to that, as we've discussed. There are, many truckers that don't know about this at all, but there are a number that do. And so we will be holding a press conference at 12:30 up on the Capitol steps, and we hope that a lot of media will come for that. We'll have some owner-operators that'll be speaking. And if people want to get involved in this, they should go to the Facebook page for information on that event that we're going to be holding on August 13th.
Okay, so that's next Tuesday. And what is the time on that? What time?
Well, as far as if they want to come and come to the Capitol steps and stand up and bring a sign, or we'll have some signs, then I would suggest they show up around, to tell you the truth,
early.
I would suggest they show up around 10:30, because they need to find a place to park out there and come on up to the, we have an area reserved at the Capitol, and I think that's on the Facebook. And so anybody can come on up and come up to the rally. The press conference itself won't start until 12:30, but certainly I would come early so you're not stuck with a bunch of chaos. It's always chaotic out there. And come on up to the steps and, be prepared to speak your mind, most definitely. So we'd love to see all kinds of truckers and their families out at the Capitol advocating for truckers and their families.
Yeah.
Right. Unfortunately, most of the guys this bill affects are in their busiest time of the year with the harvest happening.
Right.
And I think there's a concerted effort on the timing of this thing so that it went through the assembly. And let's make no mistake, these assembly persons and senators, they know exactly how much time these processes take. And I do believe that they time things when like, I own a small corporation. I run 2 trucks. My trucks are busy right now. Right. We can't get a moment off that's not within our 10-hour federally mandated rest time. So,
it costs a lot of money to take the time off, and we're seasonal. It's slow in the winter.
Right. Well, not just that. My customers depend on my trucks.
Yep.
And I contract with these other smaller corporations. I do mostly agricultural based work. But let's say if I do work with one slaughterhouse, that that tank of product has to be transported every so many days. We can't miss, or USDA shuts them down.
Right.
Other areas I deal with, I have to be there every day with the truck for 2 or 3 loads, and I can't miss it. I can't take myself and my driver and say we're going to the Capitol.
What you're saying is this is all by design. Why they're doing it this time of year?
That's
absolutely.
Well, I don't know.
That's what
I don't
saying.
know about and I don't know about that part, but that's what makes it so unfair. Like, we went to the Labor Committee hearing, and we sat there, and there were 300 people bussed in. And, we had to sit there while 300 people said they're in favor of AB 5, and it was all organized. They were all bussed in. And then we had a group of maybe 35 people, because so many people had to work. And we had to sit through all 300, and then we only were allowed to say a few words each. The times that we have shown up, and the assembly hearing as well, our time was so limited we barely had time to talk when we have gone out there. But I would suggest, if people have to work, they can send their wives and kids out, if they have older children or wives that are available, or family members as well, if at all possible, to stand up there.
Everybody needs to stand up for this. This is a travesty.
Right.
And that story that you just told about the 300 people being bussed in.
Right.
That everybody should be so angry about that, and that they want to do something about it. You should have. You should.
Well, I mean, I was claustrophobic, because I had people just crowding me from all ends. And, it was really sad, because a trucker would get up there after those 300 people, and some of them even had extended time to talk. And one trucker got up there, he said one sentence, and when he tried to say another one, they cut him off, that, his time was up. And it was the same thing with the assembly, is that, that's what makes it frustrating for the truckers. They go through a lot of effort to go to Sacramento on their own dime. We all do. And we're not arranged or organized by anyone professional. No one's paying us.
Right.
And then we never really had the chance to really speak. And when we did, it just wasn't enough. We had owner operators talk to the author. We had 2 and 3 owner operators. They came, they took their day to speak to her. And we've had owner operators come to a lot of Assembly and Senate members. And I wish they would realize how hard that was, how much money they lost, and how difficult it was for them to get up there on their own. And that should be given a lot more weight than it seems to have been given.
Oh, yeah. That I agree with you.
Well, and with that loss, there's the loss of tax revenue, because that money never was earned.
Right.
And make no mistake, we pay a lot of taxes. You don't talk about just the fuel tax that guy didn't spend that day on the 100 gallons of fuel per truck that those gentlemen were there speaking. Now we're talking $5, $10 to taxes on your automobile tank per fill up.
Right.
And you want to talk about, we fill up 100, 200 gallons of time per day.
Right.
And a lot of taxes paid on that by that truck.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and it's been a whole year when we had a protest of this kind, the same thing, and literally we had about 200 owner-operators took the day off work. Now you're talking about a lot of money. And contractors had to shut down some of their jobs, couldn't get done for a day. So they could come up, and they had signs, and they spoke, and it was only owner-operators. There were a few other industries there, but they were the ones there. And how much weight if you look on the website, you'll see signs and pictures of some of those owner-operators that were at that rally. It's been a whole year that these guys have been trying to make their case.
I don't have any words. I'm just so frustrated by legislation. I'm just so frustrated. And it just seems like we cannot get anywhere with even reason, because you cannot reason with these people because they're unreasonable. And Yeah, and I was just thinking about something when you were talking about all the, excuse me, all of the lost revenue. Don't tell me that trickle down economics is not a real thing. Because I'll tell you,
right.
I bet I'd be willing to bet if you did any kind of research about that day, I bet there was quite a bit of not only the truckers, but trickle down. It people lost a lot of money during that one day, and
Oh yeah, those losses reverberate. But I will tell you, we feel we could. I mean, the author has said something's needed, but really what's needed now, we're very short on time. We need, hundreds and even thousands of people to literally contact their own senator, contact the author. They can call and contact the governor. They can simply call. They can call leadership. I mean, they can send letters. They can send letters and through the guild. They can contact the guild about how to get letters sent, how to get the addresses and all of that. The biggest problem right now is, since so many owner operators don't know about it and don't believe it, that really, yes, we've made a lot of noise, but let's say there's been a few hundred of us maybe making noise out of tens and hundreds of thousands. There's so many, it's just not enough. So right now, the number one thing that could happen is they need to hear from a lot more truckers across the state just by simply calling the governor's office, send the letters. They can call their representatives. That's free and easy to send out the letter and make the phone call, and it's critical. That's the only way we're going to get through this, if there's enough calls and letters to support our effort.
Right.
Oh, please, people, do that.
Now,
please.
Once this thing makes it through the Senate, it's been amended since it's passed through the Assembly. It'll have to go back to the Assembly to be approved as amended before it goes to the governor. So remember, people, we need you to call not only your senator to stop it in the Senate, but the possibility of it stopping in the Senate is slim to none. So we need you also to call your assembly members, especially the members that already voted against this thing, and make sure that those members continue to say no, and that additional members say no as well.
Well, yeah, and you're not going to stop the amendment, but by saying no and by you can tell them we need the exemption, or you can just say no, one or the other. There's no way that, we don't see where there's going to be a no on AB5 for a number of reasons, but they can certainly call and say no on AB5. But the point is that legitimate owner operators need an exemption, and they still will be held to the prior standard. Doesn't mean they can go out and do whatever they want. So they need to call the assembly. Most definitely, they need to call the assembly. They need to call leadership, the governor, their own senator, and just say, look, this is going to bankrupt me. Mm-hmm. And, we need our exemption. We need you to talk to the author and to leadership about how we're going to go out. And those things reverberate, as you pointed out. When a person goes bankrupt, that reverberates far and wide.
Yes, it does. It's, and maybe you could try to reason, say, if I'm going to go bankrupt, you're not going to get my tax dollars anymore. Gosh.
Well, yeah.
That's just trivial, I'm sure. But
oh yeah, ultimately the state loses out when people go bankrupt.
Yes.
Everybody loses. The state is an end user. A lot of the work that owner operators do, all this highway work and all that, the state's the end user. And if those jobs get delayed because there's no workers to do them legally, that's going to cost the state. That's going to cost the commuters. That you're talking about. This thing would, if this passed, things would just go upside down.
If it passes,
it's insurmountable. It's
if it passed as written now, without that
exception. If it would
exception.
pass as written, it would never end up going through the way people are imagining when it comes to those legitimate owner-operators that are being relied upon for all these public works and also for hauling soil out of basements so that we can get more housing and that sort of thing. You start saying those guys are illegal, you really tell them they have to be employees, you're going to end up with a stoppage. I mean, that is going to hurt that's irreparable harm to the state.
Oh,
They're probably the biggest end user of
Absolutely.
these owner-operator services.
Boy, is that.
And, I should say there are more owner-operators in some parts of California than others. In some areas where the cost of living is lower, it's a little bit easier to get employee drivers. But in certain areas, people just cannot afford to work as employee drivers. They don't want to be employee drivers. You have some longtime immigrants that have come over. They brought all their friends and relatives. They've found a way to meet the middle class finally. You have minorities that have been in the business forever that have finally found a way to be in the middle class, and they're facing losing everything now.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
That's, yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what it looks like. Wow. I'm so glad you're on.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to learn all of this. I'm frustrated at it, but I'm glad to learn that this is. We need to get this out. I hope that this reaches more than just a few people this time.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was going to say there is hope. I mean, we're hoping to get a lot of coverage at the press conference.
Mm-hmm.
Uber and Lyft's the one been getting all the coverage really. But there is hope if thousands of people that would actually be affected would literally speak up. We can make this happen because the author already said that she didn't want to force owner-operators to lose their trucks. She said that, and she said it publicly.
Wow.
She said it publicly on the assembly floor. She said, we don't want an owner-operator to lose his $100,000 truck. So she said that. So know that, we know that, she understands, the laws. She's trying to figure out where to draw the line, but we've explained it to very clearly over and over where to draw the line, and they're just making it too difficult. They're just not hearing. They're not hearing from enough people.
Well, and here's what I'm telling them, because eventually this episode hopefully reaches everyone that looks at the Facebook page, the California Truckers Guild, Western States Trucking Associations. I'm tagging everybody in this thing.
We need to link.
I'm tagging the coalition. You guys have your Twitter at Coalition MCPH.
It's at Coalition MCPH, and we really need Twitter followers so that everybody can join in and talk about the problems, how this is going to hurt minorities, and we would love to get videos from people, and we can post those. Take a look, and you'll see videos of owner-operators, about their family and why they like being in trucking. And so Twitter is a very important tool in politics, and we need followers to help, build that for the Twitter and for the Facebook to really, build that consensus. But it all needs to translate to literally contacting assembly members, senators, leadership, and the governor, because if you don't actually contact them directly somehow, even if it's a phone call, then, they're not hearing from you.
Right.
Just talking about it to each other isn't enough. All those, members need to hear from the public, and it's hard. It's hard to write a letter. It's hard to call, but we're doing things that we can, to make it easier and easier.
Mm-hmm.
So, let the guild know you're interested. Somehow you can get from Western states the addresses. It's easy. You can look it up on the internet, but I would recommend just calling. If you're going to write to your members, go ahead and write them straight to Sacramento, because they're going to be going back to Sacramento, and the district offices won't be working with this as much. So the Sacramento addresses are all the same, and they just have the room number. Just pop a letter in the mail giving your name and address and why it would hurt you, and just throw it in the mail and send a copy to, the governor, leadership, and your own members, and call them and call the governor. But that's the only way they've got to hear from you. And if you can't actually go down there and see them, and if you can't go on August 13th, they've got to hear from you, even if it's just calling the governor's office, which Truckers Guild has that phone number posted on their Facebook. You can call, just go ahead and call them, and that's an easy and free thing that anyone can do. And as I say, call your members.
Please. That's a pretty
easy thing to do.
Yeah, please do that. It might. Sometimes you think it doesn't make a difference, but I'll tell you, I have been told that the more people who call or contact their legislator, it really does make a difference. So
it will make a difference in this case. People were really felt hopeless in the beginning, but we've built enough momentum now to where that's going to make the difference of whether we get the exemption or not. They need to hear from the people that would be affected, because if they don't hear from you, to them, it's okay with you. That's the way they look at it. So if it's not okay with you, they've got to hear from you. And if people think it won't make a difference, maybe in the beginning they could have said that. No one can say it now, because we've made progress to the point where it'll make all the difference in the world. If they just understand how you feel, that it'll hurt you.
Right.
They need to know that. They literally don't know that. There are people that don't know or understand that unless they hear it from you.
Very good.
Time to get political, people. You can't just sit on the sidelines anymore.
Well, it's time, and we're very short on time. We only have a few weeks now. We need an overwhelming, they need to, if you want to be an employee driver, do it. There's plenty of jobs available, but if you want to be an owner-operator, now is the time. It's now or never, and we can do it if enough people just speak up.
Well,
believe me, it's going to happen.
Well, and if you ever have aspirations of potentially one day working for yourself in the trucking industry, you need to ask for that exemption. You need to contact these people and stop it now, or you'll always work for someone else.
Yeah.
Well, and it's just plain old not fair. Like, I'm personally not an owner-operator, but the idea of it's killing me. And one of the main reasons that I'm fighting this is just patently unfair to people. It's just we can't let ourselves go in the direction where you're harming people that way. It's just plain wrong.
It's not.
People need to stand. You don't have to be a trucker to stand up and just say this is wrong. In fact, non-truckers should be standing up and saying this.
Exactly. Fight for what's right, and this is not right.
Right. What I tell these senators, and when I call them, I tell them this bill violates certain industries' equal protection under the law. It's inherently anti-Californian and anti-American. If you're going to regulate one industry, you must regulate all industry equal, and we've already done that. We don't need this bill to enforce other bills.
Nice.
Well,
good.
Well, right, and they deregulated trucking a long time ago. That was their decision, and even then, there was a section for owner-operators, and that was allowed. And, speaking of equality, go to Twitter and plug in hashtag disrupt inequality with no spaces, hashtag disrupt inequality, or hashtag AB5. You'll see various comments, and you can make comments and you can reply to people. And I'm saying, when I make comments, I'm saying hashtag disrupt inequality. And I adopted that from the people that actually wanted, they want people to be able to be employees. And they're saying disrupt inequality, let the guys be employees. And I'm saying disrupt inequality, don't put the owner-operators out of business.
Nice.
So if you want to make, you can make comments on Twitter, and those comments will be seen, and they need to be polite, and they need to be, well thought out. But you'll see people need to stand up for, hashtag AB5 and hashtag disrupt inequality. Stand up for truckers.
Right.
Make comments, and
our lives depend on the truckers. I just hope that everybody understands that your life, your livelihood depends on trucking.
Well,
Trucking
yeah, and what
industry
about
is very important.
Right.
Pardon me? Go
Well,
ahead.
yeah, what about agriculture?
Yeah. Well, agriculture.
Right.
You know, they rely heavily on hauling produce certain times of the year. They need owner-operators. They wouldn't be able to do it without owner-operators.
Boy,
they need to
couldn't.
call them when they need them.
Right.
98% of the tomatoes coming out of the field as we speak are being pulled by owner-operators. Right. Pinella, Valley Farm Transport, Antonini, these companies do not have the equipment as far as tractors to get the crop to the processing facilities.
Right.
They do not.
Well, yeah.
They need the...
Right, because yeah, how are they going to hire an employee that's only going to work a number of months out? First of all, you can't get them. Even if you could, it's seasonal. So, you know, all those owner-operators that are doing seasonal work that are listening to this need to speak up, because people don't understand that there's no way. How are you going to hire an employee to work for 3, 5, or 6 months? That's where the owner-operators come. They may haul tomatoes one time. They might be doing fire cleanup another time, or they might do nothing but haul roads all day and work for the same person. I mean, it's their choice. If they've earned the right, it's their choice what they're going to do, and they can change their mind anytime they want to. They can jump and do agriculture one day, haul it for, you know, whatever amount of time. They can haul roads. They can haul containers if they want. It's up to them if they have their own permit and their own truck. You're never going to get employees to do that work, and you're never going to force these owner-operators into being employees. You can't force a person to do something they don't want to do. How are you going to do it? And how is it fair? How is it fair for the state to do something like that?
It isn't. It's not. It's not.
Right.
You know, how is it appropriate? How is it appropriate in any way, shape, or form for the state to force these people out of business and force them into bankruptcy under the guise that it's going to end up helping them, when in the end, how are they going to look themselves in the mirror? When it will never it will help those people that never had their own truck, never had their permit.
Right.
So it's so easy to split the trucking. We've explained it clearly and repetitively, and they just won't budge for us.
Oh gosh.
Right. Well, they need to hear from the people. They need to hear from everyone.
Yeah.
And not just truckers.
Well, yeah.
Everyone.
Everyone.
This affects ag. It affects trucking. It affects general contractors. It affects Joe and Jane Doe buying bread at the store.
Exactly.
Because the big company has the contract to carry bread from the bakery, they utilize owner-operators as well to tow around those trailers.
Trickle down economics.
Well, yeah, and it's tough. It's tough because a lot of people aren't political. They're busy. They feel hopeless or helpless or not sure what to say. So you end up with thousands upon thousands. Even there's a lot of people that know about it, and they're really not doing anything because they're not sure what to do, or they think it's hopeless, or they're not political. And this is the time, I mean, people need to bite the bullet and rise up now over the next 3 weeks. Just be heard, whatever you have to say. If you want to be an employee, that's fine. Nobody's stopping you from that.
Right. Well, we really appreciate your time this evening, and we hope everybody makes those phone calls.
Yes, call, please. Please call people.
Again,
thank you guys so much.
You can get more information on the website, CaliforniaTruckersGuild.org. The Twitter handle again was at CoalitionMCPH. And the hashtags are hashtag AB5, hashtag Disrupt Inequality. And
yeah, go to those. If you search under those subjects, you'll see people talking about the subject, and you can reply and respond and start talking about trucking. And you know, you can tag people. It's complicated and confusing, especially for truckers. I still don't have it figured out all the way, but you'll see where if you reply to people and you retweet, you can start, you know, commenting, and people will see, you know, you can reply, you can respond. They're not talking about trucking that much anymore because we reply to them because we have such an excellent case that when we hear about trucking, we respond every time. I mean, there's really no arguing with the case that we've made.
Right.
So we just keep on making that case. And so we've been commenting on not only trucking, but when they bring up Uber, Lyft, or anything to do with AB5 or minorities or anything else, there was a big write-up on Latino caucus and that sort of thing. And, we're asking, hashtag AB5, what about the Latino owner-operators that have worked so hard and now they're going to be put out of business? I mean, they're promoting minorities, they're promoting immigrants, and now these guys are they found a way to meet the middle class, and now they're all facing being put out of business. And if you note that enough on Twitter, it'll get around, because Twitter's really big in politics, just, so talk about it. Talk about it on Twitter, but be polite. Be polite and just make your case.
That's it.
Exactly.
That's it.
Well, we'd like to thank you again for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Debbie.
And hopefully we get everybody out there on the 13th to support you.
Guys, thank you so much.
During the interview, we failed to mention that the next step for Assembly Bill 5 is going to be a hearing in the Senate Appropriations Committee. Senator Portantino can be reached. This is the chairperson of the Appropriations Committee at 916-651-4025. Vice Chair Bates can be reached at 916-651-4036. Member Bradford, Senator Bradford, can be reached at 916-651-4035. Senator Durazo is a member as well and can be reached at 916-651-4024. Senator Hill can be reached at 916-651-4013. Senator Jones can be reached at 916-651-4038. And Senator Wykowski can be reached at 916-651-4010. As Debbie told us, the majority of the state road projects are staffed by owner-operators that will be affected by Assembly Bill 5. This is important that we let the Appropriations Committee know this bill will cost the state money and is a bad idea, that we need to stop this in the Appropriations Committee, or the Appropriations Committee needs to give an exemption to the owner-operators, motor carrier permit holders, or just trucking in general. So we hope you enjoy this episode. As we've stated in the body of the interview, please contact these senators and your senators and assembly people as well. It's not too late to bug everybody about this and the governor. We need to stop this before the taxpayers are injured further by the ridiculous bills coming out of Sacramento. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Jefferson Liberty Radio. You can get in touch with us. Email us at feedback@jeffersonlibertyradio.com or via our website at jeffersonlibertyradio.com. You can also leave us a voicemail at 209-214-8099. That's 209-214-4089. We'd love to hear your questions and comments. Don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast player of choice. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, or your podcast player of choice. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review where you can. We'd really appreciate it, and it actually does help our ratings. You can find us on all the typical social media, Twitter, Facebook, even some alternative media such as BitChute and Gab. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Jefferson Liberty Radio, and we'll catch you next time. Jefferson Liberty Radio is a production of Forgotten Liberty Media. The views expressed by the host or guests throughout the various episodes may not necessarily reflect the views of Forgotten Liberty Media as a company.